Here we are in Mayflower, and one of the first significant sites is the boom, which is a remainder of the spill that happened March 29th. On your right-hand side, you see the cove, which is a small part of the larger Lake Conway to your left. The workers converged here because the spill had happened about 9/10 of a mile up. You know, the oil was coming this way from where it spilled in the subdivision, and they knew they had to mound up gravel to keep the oil from compromising the main lake. This is such a valuable recreational resource. They were afraid that if the oil got in here, what was somewhat of a disaster would turn into a catastrophe. What went through your head when you heard that this had happened?
Actually, there was relief because I knew that we had good control over that cove, Dawson Cove, the affected area.
We're talking with the Game and Fish Commission of Arkansas, and this man, Tom Bly, is in charge of their fisheries program, and they are involved in this cleanup.
I mean, when you have a spill of that magnitude and it affects such a small geographical area, I mean, you know, if you're looking for the good in a catastrophe, that's the good in that.
So this was on 6/23. Okay. I'm standing on top of the dam.
Okay. A lot of the people in the community, you know, they take photographs of 7 or 8 dead fish together.
There is a layer of black that runs through the gills.
Now, I can't look at that photograph and say whether that's an oiled fish. I don't know what's in their gills.
Most people in the affected area stuff are really thinking emotionally, and you know, they're seeing things emotionally, and I want to see it emotionally. I've worked on this lake for 25 years. Nobody's going to get more emotional about this lake than me, but you got to think clearly and comprehend what you're seeing. 7 or 8 dead fish is not dead fish. You know, when you have hundreds or thousands, then you know you've got something there that's causing those fish to die.
It is a recreation spot, and if there is oil in that lake, that's going to scare people away from this resource that is a point of pride across Arkansas.
I think, unfortunately, through what happened at Mayflower, it did bring awareness to this area of what if. You can step in. This is a Little Red River. We have about 45 miles of fishable trout water. If an event did occur, there was some sort of spill that would take place, just the thought that, uh-oh, the river is contaminated, it begins to trickle down that how it will affect the economy.
We're talking with Lowell Myers, who has been a guide for the last 2 or 3 years on the Little Red River.
This is the pipeline. I don't know if this pipeline is 2 feet underneath those rocks. I don't know if it's 5 feet. I don't know if it's 20 feet. I have no idea. The fish just gorge themselves on these flies. And if an event ever occurred with oil, that would take away not only the fish, but it would take away the food source.
You could probably count the people on 2 hands who knew it was there. So the fact that this rupture happened was an education to people about the fact that oil pipelines even exist in Arkansas and where they run.
I have been fishing this area probably for 18 years. I had no clue.
You're gonna go right. It goes through a berry farm.
The pipe goes right in front of the berries.
It goes through the backyard of a daycare.
Right behind the back playground.
People don't know it goes through their backyard. They don't know what's there. There it is.
And there's one of the round markers. So Megan is an interesting story. She heard about the Mayflower spill and to her credit, she stepped up and started doing her own research.
I went online and I pulled up the map that showed this is where the pipeline is. And I said, I don't think this map is right. So the little red marker line is where I went out and drove and said, okay, this is where I see it, this is where I see it, this is where I see it. I mean, it's right there.
Hi.
How are you?
Well, we're fine. It's quite amazing to see
We're right on top of
that you're living on top of the pipeline.
We can't move the pole.
Okay. These things happen and the press interest dies down and they assume, oh, it must be done. It must be finished
well, because it happened in Mayflower.
Right.
It didn't happen in Conway.
Right, exactly.
But it is here, and it is our problem. I don't think they should ever turn it back on.
About 1 in 4 people in this state counts on drinking water from a water source that is crossed by the Pegasus.
There's a number of questions that need to be answered before we can even start talking about whether or not this pipeline is going to operate again.
I'm John Tynan, Watershed Protection Manager for Central Arkansas Water.
Lake Maumelle is our primary drinking water source.
The Mayflower spill happened just 8 pipeline miles away from this watershed. That is huge cause for concern for this utility, and they are pushing Exxon to either abandon or relocate this pipeline out of their watershed. This is an oil pipeline, right? This is what it looks like.
This is one of about 18 places in the watershed where the Pegasus pipeline crosses over a stream or some body of water that feeds into Lake Maumelle. 400,000 people depend on this drinking water supply. So our questions are, what happened in Mayflower? Why did it happen in Mayflower? Why now and why at that location?
When Exxon made it known that Pegasus was carrying something called diluted bitumen, that made you look at your emergency response plan because this oil is heavier.
All of our emergency response activities, plans, and even drills had been based on an oil product that primarily floats. And so we're having to go back and update those to address a product that may have the potential to both float and sink.
Now, this section of the Pegasus, as I understand it, is obviously visible and should not be.
We're in the middle of a stream bed right now. We could have some of these large rocks striking the pipe. We could have timber debris getting backed up and causing additional pressures on the pipeline that frankly it wasn't designed to handle. Exxon manages 850 miles of the Pegasus pipeline, and only 13.5 of that is through the Maumelle watershed. So we do understand that. But we, as the provider of water to 400,000 people, owe it to them to make sure that we do a thorough evaluation of this pipeline and do everything we can to prevent its restart until we are assured that the situations that led to the rupture in Mayflower aren't present in the watershed.
One of the vice presidents of Exxon did come out back in August and say there is a distinct possibility that this pipeline might not operate again. The federal regulators have said, as far as they're concerned, it will not run until it is deemed safe. So the waiting game is still going on.